Well, good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom, and I'll tell you what, for a change, I'm not the only anchor on this program. Rory Suchet with us as well from the RT network. Welcome to New Delhi. I wish it was a bit less polluted at this time of the year, but anyway, it's wonderful to have you here. And there's a lot to celebrate, you know, India and Russia, this incredible relationship, Putin here in a couple of days from now.
Special, privileged, strategic partnership, a friendship that actually goes back many, many years as well.
Yep.
And when you talk about any type of smog in the air today, it doesn't take away from the glamour and the beauty of your city here. Rich in diversity, culture, the nicest people I've ever met. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's a huge Russian delegation coming here this time around, right?
It really is.
And in a sense that reflects the genuine enthusiasm around this visit.
Yeah.
It's been a while since President Putin's been here, but he's here at a time when the relationship is really headed in one direction, up.
Yes, it's absolutely well said indeed. I mean, look, it's Putin's 10th visit now here to India, and it's just another sign of the incredible friendship being shared with Modi here. And yet here we have some of the biggest drivers in global geopolitical changes today. You've got Russia, you've got India, you've got the global south now that have forged their place on the world stage. And so many people are saying these days that we're living during a time when decades are happening in weeks. The geopolitical moves today, the changes that are happening, it's a fascinating time to be a journalist and to be alive today.
No, absolutely. It is absolutely incredible. We're going to be talking about a lot of this. Well, as India gears up to host President Putin for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit, Delhi has underscored that Russia remains a long-standing and time-tested partner. As Rory mentioned, we are a special and privileged strategic partnership, India and Russia, that's been elevated consistently over the decades. There have been all sorts of fora where India and Russia continue to engage ourselves. There's the 2+2 ministerial dialogue as well, regular leader-to-leader exchanges. You know, the economic relationship between both sides, very important now. Bilateral trade touching nearly $70 billion last fiscal, joint defense production of the BrahMos missile to the new stealth frigate INS Tamal, the Kudankulan nuclear units to the Gaganyaan astronaut training program. You know, there's so much to talk about the India-Russia relationship. Before I go on with this, I'd like to introduce all of my panelists with us in the studio. Air Commodore Dr. Ashwinder Singh Behel. I think it's great to have you today, sir. There's that defense relationship. We'll talk to you about that. Dr. Peter Hansler, founder and chief editor of Forum Geopolitica.com. We've got Dr. Alexei Zakharov, fellow at the Strategic Studies Program at the Observer Research Institute. Maxim Kuznetsov, chairperson of the Russia-Asia Business Council, joins us from Moscow. Thanks, Maxim, very much for being with us. Professor Anuradha Chinoy, author, and somebody who tracks the Russia relationship very closely at the Center for Russian Studies, and Dr. Indrani Talukdar, fellow at CRF. Thank you all for being with us. So before we come to our wonderful panel today, let's just bring out the broad contours of the relationship as they exist between India and Russia at this stage. Historical ties and trust relations date back to the Cold War era. There's been the 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, friendship and cooperation, and now so much more. Defense cooperation. Russia remains India's largest and most reliable defense partner. The S-400 surface-to-air missile system did so well during Op Sindoor. The Sukhoi 30 MKI, absolutely critical for India's defense. Energy and nuclear cooperation. Russia's helped build several important civilian nuclear reactors. The Kudankulam nuclear power plant, for example. There is a long-term interest in India in LNG deals with Russia, different oil fields and gas fields in that country, where Indian companies, in fact, have a clear interest. There's political and diplomatic support, with Russia consistently supporting India, for example, for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. Russia backs our position on terrorism as well. We continue to work together at the UN, BRICS, the SCO, the G20, among other organizations, while maintaining a unique, special and privileged strategic partnership. Trade has crossed more than $65 billion in 2023-2024, both sides targeting $100 billion by 2030. So that is important in terms of the overall relationship. That's what India and Russia are working at from the perspective of an intergovernmental commission which has been formed. There are important economic corridors, for example, the North-South Transport Corridor from Chennai to Vladivostok, which might actually help this entire process of economic growth. And of course, there's science, technology and space. All of our astronauts over here were trained at a certain stage in Russia as well. This is our Gaganyaan crew. So that gives you an idea of an area of high tech that we are focusing on with Russia. We're also looking at R&D in supercomputing, AI, quantum technology, and also biotechnology. You know, and Rory, it just strikes me that it's huge. I mean, I thought, you know, this would be just short 6 points, it would be long 6 points, but it reflects the nature of the relationship.
It really, really does, Vishnu. I think you're absolutely right. It covers the spectrum now. This friendship, this special privileged strategic partnership, it's really now expanded to such a level. Whether it's Roscosmos, getting into the stars these days, whether it's the military aspect, the agricultural aspect, you know, these joint production plans, as you said, the Su-30, the Sukhoi 30, the T-90 tanks, the rifles as well.
Yep.
There is all sorts of collaborative work going on, and it's only going to increase. Why? Because India and Russia have stood the test of time as true friends, true partners, and true leaders on what is now this polycentric world order.
Yeah. Polycentric world order, that's an interesting point for me to segue on. Dr. Peter Hansler, would you like to reflect on that? There is so much global uncertainty at this stage. India has faced so many problems, for example, with the United States when it's come to sanctions, including sanctions because of the import of Russian crude oil. Do you believe that through it all, it's the partnership with Russia, with Moscow, which has defined a large part of India's foreign policy?
Yeah, I doubt that. It is not only about Russia. Russia is indeed, and you have pointed that out, an extremely important partner of India. But I look at it in a bigger picture, and that is called BRICS. In my opinion, the most powerful organization in the world. In the West, I can tell you, I read Western media also every day, it's hardly mentioned or in a condescending way. I believe that BRICS, as the organization of the global South, will dominate the world.
Yep.
But currently, what the West declares about BRICS, not mentioning it or condescending mentioning it, is not the truth. And you see the aggression against many member states, partner states, or candidates of BRICS at this time. The Americans try to dislodge this organization.
Yes.
They will slow down the development maybe, but at the end of the day, BRICS will prevail.
Yeah, I mean, I think Peter makes a very good point there. That, you know, I mean, let's not forget that the Trump White House said only a few months ago that BRICS is dead.
Yeah.
He also thought the S in BRICS was for Spain and not South Africa. Should we bring in Dr. Zaharov on this? Doctor, thanks for joining us so much on this really amazing panel we're kicking off here today. It's such a pleasure to be with you, Vishnu.
No, it's wonderful to do this joint program.
It really is.
It's fantastic.
What is your stance here? I mean, look, we're watching this blossoming multipolar world order that has now really forged its position on the global stage, and yet here we are in New Delhi for the 23rd annual India-Russia summit, Putin's 10th visit to this beautiful country. Where does the relationship stand today, given what is traditional pressure from professional partners in certain Western countries?
Thank you for having me. I think it's an opportune time to reflect on the state of affairs in India-Russia relations, because the summit was much anticipated. There has been no visit by Vladimir Putin to India during the last 4 years. So I think that now the relationship, the India-Russia relationship is back on track. We can see that some of the spheres, some of the traditional spheres of cooperation have bounced back, like defense. We have seen a lot of progress in energy, even though the situation with sanctions, I think, remain uncertain. So it's difficult to predict how the future shipments of Russian oil to India will pan out and will be continued. At the same time, we can see new areas of cooperation. We can see a lot of interest in joint ventures. We can see projects in shipbuilding, in civil aviation. I think that some of the agreements that were preliminarily approved by both sides, I think that they will be highlighted during the talks between the two leaders. So it's on the one side, it's about traditional friendship in the key areas, but it's also about finding new avenues for cooperation and partnership.
You know, Rory, it's interesting. The two leaders have this great equation between them. I don't know if world leaders are truly friends. I mean, they call themselves friends, but whether they're actually friends or not. Yeah. But there is this, equation between the two. Yeah. It's been developed over a period of time, and they seem to trust each other a great deal.
I was just going to say there is absolutely a clear level of trust between these two, regardless of the embraces and the body language that we see between them. Putin has called Modi my dear friend, and that does not, it's not that simple saying that in geopolitical politics. We get all this kind of diplo speak and this, that, and the other, but when a leader calls another one my dear friend, that speaks volumes.
It does. It does, in fact. Professor Chinoy, India is deeply invested in the process of peace in Europe. Obviously, the fighting has gone on for more than 2 years, and I think the loss of lives on both sides is a cause of serious concern. Do you believe that this is something that might come up during these talks, given that Prime Minister Modi has been both to Moscow to speak to President Putin, and he's traveled to Kiev as well to speak to Ukraine's President Zelensky?
Yes, it will definitely come up, especially on account of two factors. One, that Prime Minister Modi has been invested in this peace process. Second, that it's clear to the world that Russia is gaining a victory on the battlefield. There are desperate attempts to have a negotiated peace. The US has kind of clearly decided that they would like some kind of peace before facing any humiliating defeat. And I think India has offered several times that they do have a stake in peace, a stake in the sanctions being removed, and India will also be a beneficiary if peace comes. But we have to see how it all pans out, given that there are some interested parties who are not interested in a negotiated peace.
I mean, should we bring in Air Commodore Dr. Bahal here, our in-studio guest here, to take this conversation further? Because when it comes to potentially the military aspect of what we're seeing right now in Ukraine, I mean, obviously, the Indian side has been a firm proponent of peace, trying to find some sort of peaceful resolution. But at the end of the day, as I understand, as Putin said 24 hours ago, the entire contact line is collapsing on the Ukrainian front. Russia has the control right now. How do you see it playing out as they're talking peace initiatives?
What you're saying is absolutely right, Rory. Pokrovsk was taken over as of yesterday by the Russians. There is no doubt in my mind that though there is a large amount of attrition and though there is a slow progress, but at the same time there is relentless progress, and the way that they have captured close to 79% of Donetsk and 99.7% of Luhansk, with total area being 89% with Russia today of Donbass, and Russia wants the Donbass. And I think it is the right time for a peace deal to come in, because of it is in India's interest also that the peace deal comes in. And the peace deal must look into it, that the occupied territories that Russia has got and the Russian-speaking people that are there in Donbass, with Crimea already with Russia, the deal has to work towards Donbass and Crimea, where the Russia can let go of maybe areas in Zaporizhia or maybe areas in Sumy and Kharkiv, with the result that eventually, because in India today we are being superimposed the tariff of about 25%, because we take oil from Russia, and the intention of the US is to force Russia to go for a peace deal. I think it would be in India's interest also if the war can be stopped early, because not just this, the 65% plus component of our defense forces is Russian. And the way the Russia has been imposed thousands of sanctions all over, the things are getting delayed. We need to get the S-400. It created a world record in Op Sindoor.
1 second, let me just ask you a quick question. How many sorties have I flown on Russian aircraft?
I would love to know.
No, so I've done 5 sorties on Russian aircraft, including the Sukhoi 30 MKI prototype in Zhukovsky.
You flew the Su-30?
Yeah, I'm not a pilot myself. I flew in the back seat. But you can say I flew it. But that's fine. I have no problem in your saying that. The reason I say so is because I think what the Air Commodore says is so important. Russian weapon systems have dominated, the Indian Air Force, Army, and Navy.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, with what the collaborative effort that's already going on now between India and Russia, why stop there? I mean, look at, you know, the Orezhnik was unveiled recently, unparalleled in the world. The Budoveznik, a nuclear-powered ballistic missile. The Poseidon, a nuclear-powered underwater drone. It's astonishing.
Rory, Russia's not giving us a lot of that stuff.
Well, I'm sure, hey, I'm sure the future looks good,
But they're
frankly.
giving us Kinzhal if we buy the Su-57, which has a range of 2,000 kilometers,
Well, let's see
speed of Mach 10.
where we get with those talks. Would you like to take the next question? Or?
I would hand it over to you.
All right. Professor Chenoy, I do believe we need to talk a little bit about the economy as well. You know, the target of $100 billion is, you know, it sounds very impressive, but there's still some way to go, right? Russia has a war economy right now. The conflict continues, and therefore the full potential, some would suggest, of the India-Russia economic partnership will not be realized for the moment. Would you agree?
I think I'll give my arguments rather than yes or no. The point is that, you know, it was expected by the collective West that Russia, the ruble would collapse, the Russian economy would collapse. In fact, the reverse happened. Russian economy has strengthened. The ruble is good. I visited Moscow just a few months ago, and I saw with my own eyes how everything was functioning so well. So Russians are used to switching from a war economy to a normal one, and they have borne this very well. That's one. Second, India has gained a lot of saving its dollars on account that Russia has given it petroleum and oil, crude oil, on you know, discounted rates. According to our own Reserve Bank, we've saved billions of dollars. And so in a sense, both have bailed out each other. The Russians have bailed us out, giving us cheap crude oil. We've bailed out Russia at a time when they, you know, others were putting sanctions on them. And India has held firm. So despite 25% extra sanctions, they've held firm. Now, the problem is that Russia has accumulated a lot of rupees on account of this.
Yeah, this is
there
one
is
of the
a trade
problems.
imbalance.
There's an excess in rupees with the trade. That's right.
Needs to now, Russia is interested in investing in the Indian economy with those rupees.
That's right.
But a way has to be found to circumvent sanctions and other value chains. Otherwise, I think there are sections of Indian business who are interested that Russia invest some of these surplus rupees back into the Indian economy.
Hold on a sec. Let's keep the strike rotating.
I do apologize. I beg your pardon. I was just going to say, you know, Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world. At last count, it's well over 23,000 sanctions. And you are absolutely right when you say the sanctions haven't worked. They haven't brought Russia to its knees, as was suggested by Washington. The ruble is doing all right. In fact, now Russia is the fourth largest economy in the world in terms of PPP, purchasing power parity. So sanctions that are supposed to be deemed sacrosanct by certain professional partners who issue them have had exactly the opposite effect. By sanctioning Russia, Europe is now facing an economic stagnation as the multipolar world order with Russia and India and all these other members of the global south are really showing growth. 3.8%, 4% per year, where Europe and Western countries are stalling at 1% or less.
In fact, let me take my next question to Maxim Kuznetsov as chairperson of the Russia-Asia Business Council and somebody looking at really developing the economic relationship between both sides. You know, because of the latest round of sanctions from the United States, it does appear that the amount of crude India imports from Russia has gone down. And there is a sense that it'll come right back up, but once the war ends, because then presumably the sanctions would go away. Are you looking for that, where, you know, India is a reliable, consistent, and large importer of Russian oil going forward, not just in the period now?
So yes, India is a crucial partner of Russia in the field of oil trading, and the last year our bilateral trade exceeds 70 billion of USD. It's a large amount, and most of this amount associated with crude oil trade. It is line.
All right, we'll fix that line. Come back. Yeah, sorry, we can hear you. Go ahead.
And Russia and India contain to develop cooperation in. Yeah, and Russia and India contain to develop bilateral trade and bilateral cooperation in the field of oil too. And it demonstrates to the Western countries that Russia and India are still friends and still has shared business interest and oil as too. And moreover, we have more another fields for cooperation. It is space, it is weapons, it is nuclear energy, and another kind of high-tech technologies.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned nuclear energy, by the way. I mean,
That's
when you talk about these, for example, in Russia, these newly unveiled, these nuclear-powered Budapest, for example, and the Poseidon. But one thing that Putin did say, which was fascinating, he said, this is a technology that can take us to the stars. And this is something that Russia and India are working on together. Their space endeavors. What could be next? One of these, as they call them, a micro nuclear powered engine. I mean, is the moon next? Is Mars? Is that going to be the next chapter?
Yeah, no, absolutely, because that space program is so important. In as much as we've got our manned mission or our crewed mission planned, Rory, where India has really gained from Russia is in habitability of our capsules and some of the technologies that are built into that. Dr. Talukdar, thank you very much, and you've been waiting very patiently. But let me ask you this, and you know, it's a question I asked earlier on, but I believe it is significant that you know, there is this relationship with China which has been up and down for India, a relationship with the United States which has been problematic for several reasons, but there's been this consistent relationship with Russia. On the one hand, India wants you know, a foreign policy which is, you know, free from any other influence, completely independent, and yet the choices we have made need to be seen from the prism of who is most reliable. Is Moscow the most reliable?
Thank you so much for inviting me at the first thing, and really thank you to all of my panelists. In fact, you know, when Mr. Rory said that it's a very exciting period for the journalists, I would say it's exactly the same for the strategic community as well as the academicians as well, and also for the world leaders, and specifically when you know, Mr. Modi and Mr. Putin is meeting in this 23rd annual summit, which is really significant. And when I say it is really significant, because let us see the backdrop of the geopolitics which is happening right now. It's not only about the Trump's you know, tariffs on India, but also you know, let us remind about the Trump's you know, policies when it comes to US and China, like where he has been talking about the G2. Then there is definitely, and I always keep saying that the Ukraine war, actually somewhere it is a kind of a boon when we see from the strategic point of you know, view, because it has opened up, you know, a kind of an area where things are absolutely clear in the realistic terms. So realism as a theory is at best, you know, where all the countries are somewhere, I feel, can be, you know, thinking about what kind of strategies they want, because national interest has become absolutely clear for each and every country, including for India. And that is the reason why we see that despite the tariff threats by US, or the, you know, the threats of importing Russian oil, or the S-400, which we saw during this 2014-2015 when the first dealing had happened between India and Russia on S-400, India never stopped its relationship with Russia. Because if you look at the trajectory of India-Russia relationship since the Soviet Union time, I think it is the most stable, you know, relationship. And as you all at the beginning also have spoken about, that it's a time-tested, you know, special privilege strategic partnership. Yeah. And you know, I also feel that in this new world, it's a new world because of what Ukraine war is, you know, revealing in itself. And why I say it, because you see the, you know, US-Europe relationship, the fragmentation between the so-called allies is, you know, absolutely clear in front of everyone to see. Based on that, if you calculate the India-Russia relationship, it is absolutely stable.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good comment there. I mean, can we bring it back to Peter Hensler one more time here? Because Peter, with your special background in geopolitics and geoeconomics, I'm just curious as to how do you think the Trump White House is watching what's happening here in the next 48 hours here in New Delhi? You know, frontline multipolar world order, Putin and Modi inevitably going to be doing their embrace. How do you think the Trump White House will be watching this event?
I think with greatest concern. Because I am looking at the multipolar world. That is a concept the United States does not understand. They still live in the world of hegemony, and they think that China will be the new number one, and they will take the Americans off the throne they have been sitting on for the past 80 years. And this is not a concern. And now they step by step find out, okay, if it's a multipolar world, and the other big elephant in the room, and that is India. Yeah. And there's another problem. In the West, everybody's talking about China. And not nobody, but, people in the West don't appreciate the power, the size, and the force of India. And now, step by step, they realize that. And I think that in the White House, this will cause a huge amount of concern.
Well, it's going to be such an important visit. It's coming up in a couple of days from now. A huge sense of excitement, of anticipation, what to expect. Rory, it's been wonderful having you with us over here in the NDTV studio. You don't need to go away. We can have you here in NDTV.
No, don't tempt me, my friend.
You can stay put right over here. But for the moment, from all of us here, we'd like to thank you very much. People are a close eye out on this coming visit. It is so critical for India's foreign policy. From all of us here, goodbye.